4:30 in the morning. The phone's vibration against the metal security desk cut through silence like a scalpel through skin. James Hewitt stared at the screen for 3 rings, knowing with the certainty that comes from experience that nothing good happens at 4:30 a.m. "Good news waits for daylight," he answered on the 4th ring. The voice belonged to a night nurse at Boston General Young and practiced in the art of delivering bad news gently. "Mr. Hewitt, this is Emily calling about your mother, Lorraine. She's taken a critical turn. The doctor feels you should come immediately." A pause, surgical and precise. "If you want to say goodbye." The world kept spinning. Time didn't stop. The second hand on the wall clock continued its relentless march. James looked at the notice taped beside the schedule. "Abandoning your post equals immediate termination. No exceptions." He thought about his son, 6-year-old Archer, asleep at Mrs. Patterson's apartment, $15 a night that represented choosing between the boy's safety and groceries. Thought about the eviction notice in his jacket pocket, 14 days. To produce $4,200 or join Boston's invisible homeless population. Then he thought about his mother's hands, the same hands that had worked double shifts at the diner to fund his nursing education. Those hands were going still, and no amount of money would buy him another moment to hold them. James grabbed his jacket and left the building he was paid to protect. The taxi meter ticked upward like a countdown to bankruptcy. $28 from downtown to the hospital. James watched the numbers climb and performed the math he'd become expert at. 2 hours of work, 4 loads of laundry, enough to keep Archer's 3 rotating shirts clean for school, where other children had started commenting. Boston General's ICU smelled like every hospital he'd worked in before Rebecca died. Antiseptic attempting to mask decay, hope trying to disguise desperation. Room 412 was on the 4th floor. James took the stairs because waiting for elevators felt like surrender. His mother looked impossibly small under the thin blanket. Lorraine Hewitt had been granite and fire his entire life, 5'2" of pure Maine stubbornness who'd raised him alone after his father disappeared. Now she was fragile bones and failing organs machines beeping out the mathematics of a life winding down. Her eyes opened when he took her hand, still sharp, still seeing everything. She pulled down the oxygen mask with trembling fingers. "You left work?" Not a question. She knew him too well. "Don't talk. Save your strength." "For what?" The ghost of her fierce smile appeared. "I'm done saving Jamie. Now I'm spending everything." He wanted to argue, to insist doctors could be wrong, that stage 4 lung cancer wasn't always a death sentence. But Lorraine had raised him to be honest, and lying to her now would be the cruelest farewell. She squeezed his hand, with what little strength remained. "You've been surviving, not living. 7 years since Rebecca died. I watch you work yourself into the grave raising Archer alone, and you're so busy being strong you forgot how to be happy." "Mom, I'm fine." "You're drowning, too proud to grab the life preserver." Each word cost her breath. "Promise me something. Promise you'll stop running from help. Promise you'll let yourself live again, not just exist." James felt tears burning behind eyes that hadn't cried since the night Rebecca bled out giving birth to Archer. Crying was a luxury single fathers working 3 jobs couldn't afford. "I promise." The words came out hollow. They both knew it. Lorraine's eyes softened. She touched his face with one hand. "Jamie, poverty isn't a sin, but refusing to live because you're poor is." She took a ragged breath. "Archer needs to see you happy. He needs to know his father chose life. Don't be scared, not of needing people, not of loving again. Fear is expensive. Can't afford it." The monitors changed pitch, slowed. A nurse appeared in the doorway, hesitated, retreated to give them privacy. Lorraine's hand went slack in his. Her last word was his name, and then the machines flatlined, and James sat holding her cooling hand, while nurses came to record the time, 11:47 a.m. On a Monday that carved itself into his bones like a scar, he'd lost his job, lost his mother. In 3 days, he'd have to explain death to a 6-year-old who'd already lost too much. The funeral happened on a Friday. 8 people attended. James, Archer, Aunt Harper, Rebecca's younger sister from Seattle, 2 neighbors, Father Thomas from the church, and 2 women from the diner where Lorraine had worked 30 years. The funeral home's package cost $3,800. James had $1,200 from a GoFundMe campaign Harper had set up, and $2,600 on a credit card he'd sworn never to use. The math was simple and brutal. Archer wore James's college suit jacket, enormous on the boy's small frame despite Harper's attempts with rolled sleeves and a cinched belt. He looked like a child playing dress-up at grief, which he was. Except there were no winners in this game. Father Thomas said kind things about Lorraine's dedication, strength, and faith. All true, all insufficient. How do you summarize 30 years of quiet heroism in 15 minutes? How do you capture a woman who worked doubles to afford textbooks for a son who'd eventually abandon nursing to work security? You don't. You say the words "lower the casket, accept condolences from people who mean well but cannot help." As they walked to the parking lot, Archer slipped his small hand into James's larger one. "Dad, is it just us now?" The question was so simple, so devastatingly direct. James looked down at his son, Rebecca's eyes, Rebecca's stubborn chin, James's perpetual state of being, one crisis from collapse, and found no words. Aunt Harper saved him. "You've got me, kiddo. Always." But they both knew Seattle was 2,000 miles away and Harper had her own family. The truth was exactly what Archer had intuited with childhood's brutal clarity. It was just them now. 3 days after the funeral, James stood in his studio apartment staring at the eviction notice taped to the door. 5 days to vacate. He'd missed the 14-day deadline while dealing with his mother's death. The landlord had been sympathetic but firm. Business was business. $127 in checking, $11,400 in credit card debt. No job. A 6-year-old son who deserved better than a father who'd failed at everything except showing up. The apartment was 400 square feet in Dorchester that smelled like the Chinese restaurant downstairs. Archer's room was a corner sectioned by a bookshelf, his bed a mattress on the floor. James slept on a futon, doubling as their couch. It wasn't much, but it had been theirs. His phone rang. "Harper. Jamie, I've been thinking. Bring Archer out here just for a few months. Give yourself time to get stable. Good schools here, safe neighborhood. It'll give you breathing room." Every word made sense. Every word felt like failure. "I can't abandon my son." "You're not abandoning him. You're giving him stability while you build something sustainable. Jamie, what's your plan? You're about to be homeless. What are you going to do? Live in your car with a 6-year-old? The worst part was she was right. James had no plan beyond momentum and stubbornness, 7 years of barely controlled emergency finally winning. He looked at Archer playing with a toy car, missing 2 wheels, making engine noises, oblivious to the dissolution of his entire world. "I'll think about it." But they both knew he'd already decided. The envelope sat on the kitchen counter 2 days before James opened it. Pale blue, expensive paper, his mother's handwriting for Jamie. Open after. Inside was a withdrawal slip from her savings account. $380, every penny she had left, and a note. "Jamie, this is for you and Archer. I was saving it for something important. Turns out you're the important thing. Use it for the plane tickets. Take Archer to Harper. Get yourself sorted. And remember, choosing to accept help isn't weakness. It's wisdom. I love you. Be brave enough to live. Mom." James stared at the numbers. His mother had died broke so he could have one more chance. The tickets to Seattle cost $362 round trip. $18 left. He booked them. The morning of the flight, James woke at 4 a.m., out of habit. 7 years of waking at 4, shower, make breakfast for Archer, get the boy to the neighbor before school run to whichever job started earliest. His body didn't know how to sleep past 4 anymore. He packed their lives into 2 duffel bags. Archer's clothes, mostly hand-me-downs and thrift store finds. James's work uniforms useless now, but he couldn't discard them. The photo album with pictures of Rebecca. Archer's favorite stuffed elephant worn smooth from being held every night for 6 years. The toy car with missing wheels. Everything else stayed. The futon, the bookshelf, the dishes. The apartment complex would sell or trash it. Either way, it wasn't theirs anymore. Archer was still asleep when James finished packing. The boy looked peaceful, one arm wrapped around the elephant. James tried to memorize the moment the last morning they'd wake together in their own place before everything changed. He gently shook Archer awake. "Hey, buddy, time to get up. We've got a plane to catch." Archer's eyes opened slowly, confused. Then he remembered. "We're really going. We're really going. Are you coming back for me?" The question was a knife between ribs. James knelt beside the mattress. "Yes. Soon as I get a job, get a place to live, I'm coming back. This is temporary. You understand, temporary." Archer nodded, but his eyes said he'd heard promises before. He'd heard his mother promise to come back from the hospital. Promises were just words when you were 6 and the world kept taking things away. They took the bus to the airport. Logan at 6 a.m. was a study in inequality. Business travelers in expensive suits pulling sleek carry-ons, grabbing $7 lattes without checking balances. Families in matching vacation outfits excited about Disney or Hawaii. And James and Archer carrying everything they owned in 2 duffel bags held together with duct tape and hope. The ticket agent looked at their reservation with barely concealed pity. Economy, row 38. The seats that didn't recline next to the bathroom that never stopped flushing. Checking bags. James looked at the bags, looked at the $70 fee. "No, we'll carry them." The agent's expression said she'd seen this movie before. She handed them boarding passes without comment. Security took forever. The TSA agent made jokes about Archer's stuffed elephant being a security risk kind about it, but James felt the impatience of people in line behind them. Rich people annoyed at poor people for holding up their important lives. They found seats at the gate. Archer pressed his face against the window watching planes take off. "Dad, which one is ours?" James checked the departure board. Flight 847 to Seattle. Gate C22. Boarding in 40 minutes. "Haven't brought it to the gate yet, buddy. Soon." The plan, if it could be called that, was to drop Archer in Seattle with Harper, spend a week job hunting, find work, find a place, bring Archer home. Simple. Except nothing was simple when you were broke. His phone buzzed. Text from Harper. "Flight on time, call when you land, love you." He typed back, "On time, see you soon." What he didn't type, "I'm terrified. I'm failing my son. I don't know how to fix this." Boarding started with first class. James watched them walk down the jetway, men in suits costing more than 3 months of James's old salary, women in designer everything. People who lived in a world where $380 was dinner, not your mother's entire savings. Then business class, premium economy, finally the rest of them, the people in row 38. James grabbed the duffel bags and took Archer's hand. They walked down the jetway. Archer's hand tightened in his. "You okay, buddy?" "Just nervous. What if the plane crashes?" "Planes don't crash. Statistically, you're safer flying than driving." "Then why are you scared?" James stopped walking, looked down at his son, staring up with Rebecca's eyes, seeing right through the facade. "I'm not scared of the plane, buddy. I'm scared of everything else." Archer processed this with the seriousness of a child who'd learned too early that adults didn't have all the answers. "It's okay to be scared, Dad. Grandma said being brave means being scared and doing it anyway." James felt something crack in his chest. He knelt in the jetway and pulled Archer into a hug. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just don't listen." James laughed. Actually laughed. It felt foreign, like a language he used to speak. They found their seats. Row 38A and B, window and middle. The aisle seat was occupied by a businessman who didn't look up from his phone as they climbed over him. James helped Archer into the window seat, shoved the duffel bags under the seat in front because the overhead bins were full. The seats were narrow, cramped, designed for maximum profit rather than human comfort. But Archer's face lit up looking out the window. "Dad, we're so high up already. We haven't taken off yet, buddy. We're still on the ground." "Oh, but we will be high up soon, right?" "Very high up. 30,000 feet. Archer's eyes went wide. He turned back to the window, pressed his nose against the plastic, watching ground crew load bags. James settled into the middle seat and tried to make himself small. Through the gap between seats he could see into first class. Leather seats, champagne in real glasses, a woman in an expensive suit typing on a laptop probably costing $6,000. She looked annoyed, gestured impatiently at a flight attendant who hurried over with apologies James couldn't hear. Two different worlds, same plane, may as well have been different planets. The woman in first class had the kind of face that appeared in business magazines. Sharp features, perfect makeup, the confidence of someone who'd never worried about rent. She worked with the intensity of someone for whom time literally equaled money, fingers flying across the keyboard, phone pressed to her ear. James looked away. Looking at people like that hurt, not because he resented their success, though. Maybe he did a little, but because they reminded him of the person he might have been. The nurse who saved lives, who made a difference, who had purpose beyond surviving. That person had died 7 years ago in a hospital room holding Rebecca's hand, as she bled out, unable to do anything except watch her go. The flight attendant's voice came over the intercom, mechanical and chipper. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard Flight 847 with service to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport." The plane lurched backward. Archer grabbed James's hand. "Here we go, Dad. Here we go, buddy." The engines roared. The plane accelerated, pressing them back into seats. Archer squealed with delight as they lifted off, nose pointing skyward, Boston shrinking below. James opened his eyes and looked at his son's face. Pure joy. The uncomplicated happiness of a child who still believed in magic, who thought planes were miracles, who hadn't yet learned the world was designed to break you. He wanted to preserve that innocence forever. Wanted to build a world where Archer could stay 6 years old, where wonder didn't curdle into cynicism. But he was fresh out of miracles. All he had left was momentum and stubbornness and his mother's voice telling him to be brave. The plane leveled off. The seatbelt sign dinged off. People started pulling out laptops and books. James leaned his head back and tried to rest. He hadn't slept more than 3 hours a night in weeks. Archer tugged his sleeve. "Dad, I'm hungry." Of course he was. James pulled the granola bar from the duffel bag. It was smashed, broken into pieces inside the wrapper. He handed it to Archer anyway. "Sorry, it's all I've got." Archer took it without complaint, ate slowly, making it last. James's stomach growled. He ignored it. He'd eaten breakfast toast at 4 a.m., and that would have to hold him. Food was for Archer. 40 minutes into the flight, the woman in first class stood up. James saw her through the gap in seats. She stretched, sat back down, reached for something on her tray table. Then she started choking. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a hand to her throat, confusion crossing her face. Then her face went red, purple, her mouth opened and closed like a fish, no sound coming out. The flight attendant appeared, moving fast. Ma'am, are you okay?" The woman couldn't answer. Her lips were turning blue. People started noticing. Murmurs rippled through the cabin. Someone said, "Oh my God." Someone else fumbled for their phone, started recording. The flight attendant's voice went sharp, professional, panic barely controlled. "Medical emergency. Does anyone on this flight have medical training?" Silence. 50 people staring, no one moving. James felt it before he thought it, the muscle memory of 12 years as a nurse. 2 years as an EMT. His body knew what to do, even if his brain had spent 7 years trying to forget. He was out of his seat before making the conscious decision to stand. Archer's voice, small and scared. "Dad, where are you going?" Stay here, buddy. Don't move. Daddy has to help someone. He pushed past the businessman who finally looked up from his phone, annoyed at the disruption. James moved up the aisle. A flight attendant tried to stop him. Sir, you need to return to your seat. I'm a nurse. Let me through. She stepped aside. The woman was slumped in her seat, eyes wide with terror, skin. Cyanotic, lips swelling. Classic anaphylaxis, severe allergic reaction, minutes from death if someone didn't act. James dropped to his knees beside her. Ma'am, can you hear me? She nodded barely. He checked her pulse. Thread erasing, 120, blood pressure would be dropping, airway closing, clock ticking. She needs epinephrine. Do you have a medical kit on board? The flight attendant name tag said. Melissa looked paralyzed. Yes, but I don't know how. Get it. Now! Melissa ran. James turned back to the woman. Her eyes were rolling back, losing consciousness. He tilted her head back, checked her airway. Severely constricted. Stridor, that harsh, wheezing sound meant maybe 5 minutes before complete closure. Stay with me. You're going to be okay. I've got you. He didn't know if that was true. Didn't know if 7 years of atrophy had stolen his competence. But she needed someone to believe it, and right now he was all she had. Melissa returned with the medical kit, hands shaking. James ripped it open, found the EpiPen. The familiar weight in his hand. Brought everything back, the training, the procedures, the calm that descended when lives were on the line. He tore open the package, removed the safety cap, positioned the pen against her thigh. This is going to hurt, but it's going to save your life. He jabbed down, hard, threw her expensive pants into the muscle, held it for 10 seconds while epinephrine discharged. Then he waited. 5 seconds. 10. 15. The woman gasped. A horrible rattling sound as air forced past swollen tissue. But air, oxygen, life. Her color started shifting from blue back toward pink. Breathing, still labored, but breathing. James kept his hand on her pulse, counted, monitored. That's it. Keep breathing. Slow and steady. You're okay now. The cabin erupted in applause. People cheering like this was entertainment, a story they'd tell at dinner parties. James ignored them, focused on the woman's vitals. Pulse stabilizing, respirations improving, crisis passing. Melissa stared at him like he'd performed magic. How did you... EMT training. She had anaphylactic shock, severe allergic reaction, probably shellfish judging by the lobster roll wrapper. He pointed to the trash on her tray. She'll need monitoring. Epinephrine wears off in about 20 minutes. If symptoms return, there's a second dose in the kit. Call ahead. Have paramedics waiting when we land. Yes, of course. Sir, what's your name for the report? James looked at the woman. She was conscious now, staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. Gratitude, confusion, something else. He stood. Doesn't matter, just make sure she gets to a hospital. He started walking back to his seat. Melissa called after him. Sir, wait, we need your information. But James was already gone, disappearing into the rows of economy seats back to where he belonged. Archer was standing on his seat, craning to see. Dad! That was amazing, you saved her. Just did what needed to be done, buddy. Sit down, buckle up. The businessman in the aisle seat stared at James with something like respect. That was impressive. You a doctor. Used to be a nurse. Used to be... James didn't answer. Didn't explain how you stop being the person you trained to be when the person you loved dies because you couldn't save her. He buckled his seatbelt and closed his eyes. Archer leaned against him. You're the best dad in the world. James put his arm around his son and tried to believe it. The rest of the flight was quiet. James replayed the scene in his head, analyzing his performance, second-guessing every decision. Had he administered the epinephrine correctly? Should he have done more? The spiral was familiar. The catastrophizing. The inability to trust that he'd done enough. Rebecca used to call him out on it, tell him to stop living in worst-case scenarios, to accept that he was competent. But Rebecca wasn't here to talk him down anymore. The plane landed at 1:05 p.m. Seattle time. Paramedics boarded before anyone deplaned went straight to first class, loaded the woman onto a stretcher. As she passed James's row, she turned her head, made eye contact. Her lips moved. 2 words, silent but clear, "Thank you." James nodded. Then she was gone. The cabin doors opened. People flooded the aisles, desperate to deplane 30 seconds faster. James and Archer waited. Let everyone else go first. By the time they got off, the woman was long gone. The gate area was crowded with arriving passengers greeting families, business people rushing to connections. Aunt Harper was waiting at baggage claim. She saw them and waved, bright smile dimming when she got a good look at James's face. "Jamie, you look terrible." "Thanks, Harper. You look great, too." She pulled him into a hug anyway, then knelt and hugged Archer. "Hey, kiddo. Ready for an adventure?" Archer nodded, but his hand found James's again, holding tight. They collected the duffel bags and headed to Harper's car. Harper's house in Ballard was quiet suburban normalcy James had never been able to afford. 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, a golden retriever named Scout, who immediately tackled Archer with enthusiastic licks. Harper's husband Tom worked in tech, made 6 figures doing something James didn't understand. They had 2 kids, both older than Archer, both polite and well-adjusted in that way that came from never worrying about money. Harper showed them the guest room, Archer's room now. Twin bed with a real comforter, desk, bookshelf, window with a view of the backyard. Archer looked around with wide eyes. "This is all for me, all for you, kiddo." James set the duffel bag down and felt something tight in his chest. Harper pulled him aside while Archer explored. "He'll be fine, Jamie. Great schools here. We'll make sure he has everything he needs. You focus on getting stable." "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me. Just promise you'll take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup." He stayed for dinner. Tom grilled burgers. The kids played in the backyard. It was aggressively normal, painfully wholesome, everything James couldn't provide. At 8 o'clock, Harper suggested Archer get ready for bed. School tomorrow. James went upstairs to say goodnight. Archer was in new pajamas Harper had bought, sitting on the bed edge holding his elephant. "Dad, when are you coming back?" "Soon, buddy, I promise." "That's what you said last time." James sat next to him, searched for words that wouldn't be lies. "I know I've let you down. I know things have been hard. But I'm trying, Archer. I'm trying so hard to make things better." "I know. I just wish you didn't have to go." "Me too." They sat in silence. Then Archer spoke again, quieter. "The lady on the plane, the one you saved. Did you know her?" "No." "Then why did you help her?" James thought about it, about why he'd stood when 50 others stayed seated. "Because it was the right thing to do, because when someone needs help and you can give it, you do. Even if it's hard, even if it scares you." Archer processed this with his usual seriousness. "Is that what you're doing now, leaving me here because it's the right thing?" The question was a knife between ribs. "Yes, because I love you. Because I want you to have what I can't give you right now." Archer nodded. Didn't argue. Just accepted with the resignation of a child who'd learned arguing didn't change reality. James tucked him in, kissed his forehead, told him he loved him, walked downstairs before the tears came. He left the next morning at dawn. Harper drove him to a shelter downtown that took in men looking for work. It wasn't nice, but it was a bed and a shower and a place to keep his duffel bag while he pounded pavement. The first week was brutal. James applied to 37 jobs, got 4 interviews, no offers. The rejections followed a pattern. They'd look at his resume, see the 7-year gap in nursing work, ask what he'd been doing. Security guard, line cook, handyman. The interviewer's expressions would shift, polite but final. "We're looking for someone with more recent experience." By the second week, James was running out of money. The $18 left after plane tickets was gone. He survived on shelter meals, free coffee at job interviews, and the slow erosion of what little dignity remained. On Friday of the second week, his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. He almost didn't answer. Debt collectors had been calling for months, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Hewitt." The voice was male, professional, vaguely familiar. "Yeah, my name is Garrett Sullivan, head of security for Ashford Medical Technologies. I'm calling on behalf of Victoria Ashford." James's brain took a second to catch up. "Who?" "The woman whose life you saved on Flight 847. Ms. Ashford has been trying to locate you. She'd very much like to speak with you." James felt something cold settle in his stomach. "How did you find me?" "Ms. Ashford is a very determined person. May I ask if you'd be willing to meet with her?" "Why?" "She wants to thank you, and she has a proposition that may be of interest." Every instinct said to hang up. Rich people didn't call poor people unless they wanted something. But $18 was $18, and propositions were more than he had right now. When, "Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Discovery Park, bench near the north entrance, Ms. Ashford will meet you there." James hung up without confirming, stared at the phone like it was a grenade. Harper called that evening, put Archer on. "Dad, when are you coming to visit?" "Soon, buddy. How's school?" "Good. My teacher is nice, but some kids made fun of my shoes." James closed his eyes. The shoes were thrift store 2 sizes too big so Archer could grow into them. "What did you do?" "Told them my dad is a hero, that he saves people. They said, 'Prove it.'" Pride and pain in equal measure. "So I told them about the plane, about how you saved that lady and they stopped being mean. I'm proud of you, buddy. I'm proud of you too, Dad. Love you. Love you too." After they hung up, James sat in the shelter's common room and stared at nothing. A hero. Archer thought he was a hero. Heroes didn't leave their kids with relatives because they couldn't keep a roof over their heads. Heroes didn't fall apart when their wives died. Heroes didn't spend 7 years running from the person they used to be. But maybe heroes showed up anyway. Maybe that's all heroism was, showing up when everything in you screamed to run. Discovery Park at 3 p.m. Saturday was full of families. Kids on bikes, dogs chasing frisbees, normal people living normal lives. James found the bench, sat, waited. At 3:05, a black Mercedes pulled into the lot. Expensive, understated. The woman who stepped out was the one from the plane. No oxygen mask this time. Just sharp features, expensive clothes, and confidence that came from never doubting you belonged anywhere. Victoria Ashford walked across the grass like she owned it, probably did, knowing rich people. She stopped a few feet from the bench. "Mr. Hewitt." "Ms. Ashford. Thank you for meeting me." James didn't respond, just waited. Victoria sat on the other end of the bench, maintaining careful distance. "I've been looking for you for 2 weeks. You're not an easy man to find." Didn't realize I was lost. A flicker of something crossed her face. Amusement. Irritation. "I wanted to thank you for saving my life. The doctor said without immediate intervention I would have died." "You're welcome. We done—" He started to stand. She spoke quickly. "Wait, please, I have a proposition." There it was. James sat back down. "I'm listening." Victoria pulled a folder from her bag, handed it to him. "My foundation runs a program called Second Chance Nursing Initiative. We provide scholarships to people with nursing backgrounds who want to return to healthcare. Full tuition for recertification, housing assistance, job placement upon completion." James opened the folder, read the first page, felt his jaw tighten. "You investigated me. I did my due diligence. You're a registered nurse who hasn't worked in healthcare for 7 years. Currently unemployed, about to be homeless with a dependent child. You need help." The word landed like a slap. James closed the folder, handed it back. "I don't need your charity. This isn't charity, it's an investment. Our clinics need nurses who understand what it's like to struggle. Most healthcare workers come from comfortable backgrounds. They mean well, but they don't get it. You've lived it. So you want to parade me around as your success story, the poor nurse you rescued?" Victoria's expression hardened. "I want to give you an opportunity. What you do with it is up to you. And if I say no, then you say no. and I go back to Boston, and you go back to whatever plan you had that doesn't include a roof over your head." They stared at each other. Two strangers locked in a battle neither could afford to lose. James thought about Archer, the phone call, the shoes, the quiet acceptance in his son's voice when he talked about kids making fun of him. Thought about his mother's voice, "Don't be scared, can't afford it." But he was scared, terrified, because accepting help meant admitting he'd failed, meant acknowledging that he couldn't do it alone. His mouth opened before his brain caught up. "I need to think about it." Victoria nodded, pulled out a business card. "You have 72 hours. After that, the spot goes to someone else." She stood, extended her hand. James looked at it, at her, at the life preserver being thrown to a drowning man. He shook her hand. Her grip was firm, professional, the handshake of someone who closed deals and won negotiations. "One more thing, Mr. Hewitt. This program is real. I don't do vanity projects. You'd be earning every penny. No special treatment. Same standards as everyone else. You fail, you're out." "Good." Something shifted in her expression, almost like respect. 72 hours. She walked back to the Mercedes, drove away. James sat on the bench for a long time after holding the business card, watching families play in the park, trying to decide if this was rescue or just a different kind of drowning. That night in the shelter, James lay on a cot in a room shared with 11 other men and stared at water-stained ceiling tiles. The lights never fully went out, safety protocol, so even at midnight the room glowed with sickly yellow fluorescence. Someone 3 beds down snored like a chainsaw. Someone else muttered in their sleep, fighting demons James couldn't see. He pulled out Victoria Ashford's business card, thick paper embossed lettering. Ashford Medical Technologies, Victoria Ashford, CEO and founder. A phone number, an email address, an office in Boston's financial district that probably had a view of the harbor. 72 hours, 3 days to decide if he was desperate enough to accept help from a stranger. 3 days to choose between pride and survival. His phone buzzed. Text from Harper. "Archer keeps asking when you're visiting." "Maybe Sunday I can pick you up." James typed back, "Maybe. I'll let you know." What he wanted to type, "I might be moving back to Boston. I might be accepting charity from a billionaire. I might be giving up on doing this alone." But admitting those things felt like failure, so he said nothing. Morning came too early. The shelter cleared out by 7, everyone out to look for work or pretend to. James walked to the public library, the only place with free internet and warmth that didn't require purchasing something. He Googled Victoria Ashford. The results were extensive. Forbes profile, TED Talk, multiple interviews in business journals, photos of her at charity galas, ribbon cuttings, industry conferences. Always alone, never with family, never smiling in a way that reached her eyes. The biography was impressive in the way that made James's life feel even smaller by comparison. Foster care in Portland, Maine, full scholarship to MIT, graduated top of her class, founded Ashford Medical Technologies at 28 with a $50,000 loan. Grew it into a $2.8 billion company in 14 years. Self-made, ruthless, known for brilliant strategy and zero tolerance for incompetence. He found an article from 3 years ago. Ashford launches foundation to address healthcare inequality. It mentioned the Second Chance Nursing Initiative, pilot program, 12 students, 67% graduation rate, real numbers, real people. Not a PR stunt. He read testimonials from graduates, single mothers who'd gotten nursing degrees, formerly incarcerated men who'd found purpose. People who'd been where James was, now broke, desperate, ashamed, and who'd clawed their way back. One testimonial stuck with him. "I thought accepting help meant I'd failed. Turns out refusing help was the real failure. This program gave me my life back." James closed the browser, sat in the library's silence, and let the words settle. Sunday morning, Harper picked him up for a visit with Archer. The drive from downtown Seattle to Ballard felt longer than it was, every mile a reminder of the distance between the father he wanted to be and the father he actually was. Archer was in the backyard when they arrived, throwing a tennis ball for Scout. He looked happy, settled, like maybe being here wasn't the tragedy James had imagined. The boy ran over when he saw the car. "Dad!" James knelt and caught him in a hug that felt like the only solid thing in his life. "Hey, buddy, miss me?" "So much. Aunt Harper made pancakes. Do you want pancakes?" "Sure, buddy." They went inside. Harper's kitchen smelled like maple syrup and coffee, domestic comfort James hadn't known in years. The walls were covered with children's artwork, family photos, the accumulated evidence of a life built on stable ground. Harper put a plate in front of him. Pancakes, bacon, eggs. More food than he'd eaten in a week. "You look thin, Jamie." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. When's the last time you had a real meal?" He couldn't remember. Days blurred when you were surviving on shelter food and free samples from grocery stores. Archer climbed into the chair next to him, chattering about school, about his new friend Marcus, about how he'd learned to multiply by fives. Normal kid stuff. The kind of childhood James wanted him to have. After breakfast, they played in the backyard. Archer showed James the treehouse Tom had helped him build. They threw the ball for Scout until the dog collapsed in exhausted happiness. For a few hours, James could almost pretend things were okay. Then Archer asked the question James had been dreading. "When are you coming back to get me?" They were sitting on the back porch steps. James had his arm around Archer's shoulders, the boy leaning into him with the complete trust children give their parents before life teaches them otherwise. "Soon. That's what you said last week." "I know. Aunt Harper says you're looking for a job. Did you find one?" James thought about the business card in his wallet, about Victoria Ashford's proposition, about how close he was to saying yes and how terrified that made him. "Maybe. There's something I'm considering. A program that would let me be a nurse again." Archer looked up at him, eyes bright. "Really, you'd be a nurse like before?" "Yeah, like before." "That's good, Dad. You were happy when you were a nurse. You told me that once." Had he? James didn't remember saying it, but it was true. Before Rebecca died, before everything fell apart, nursing had given him purpose, made him feel like he mattered. "If I do this program, I'd have to go back to Boston. It would be 6 months of school. You'd have to stay here with Aunt Harper until I finish." Archer's face fell. 6 more months. But then I'd have a real job, a good job, and we could get our own place again, a real apartment, maybe even a house, with a yard like this one. The boy processed this with his usual gravity. "Okay, I can wait 6 months, if it means you'll be happy." The casual selflessness of it broke something in James's chest. His 6-year-old son was willing to sacrifice another 6 months of his childhood so his father could chase stability. What kind of world made children that strong? He pulled Archer closer. "You're the bravest person I know. You're braver. You save people. Not lately. You saved that lady on the plane, and you're saving us by doing this program." Out of the mouths of children. Wisdom James couldn't see from inside his own head. Harper appeared in the doorway. "Jamie, can we talk kitchen?" He kissed the top of Archer's head and went inside. Harper had coffee waiting. Her expression said this wasn't a casual conversation. "He's doing well here, adjusting better than I expected." "That's good. But he misses you, asks about you constantly, sleeps with that stuffed elephant and a photo of you next to his bed." James felt his throat tighten. Harper continued, gentler now. "You need to make a decision, Jamie, for his sake. Either take this opportunity, whatever it is, and build something stable, or figure out something else. But don't leave him in limbo. Kids need to know what's happening, even if what's happening is hard." "I know." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you're so paralyzed by pride that you can't see the life preserver right in front of you." The same metaphor Victoria had used. Drowning man, life preserver. "What if I fail? What if I take this chance and screw it up and end up right back where I started, except now I've proven I can't even succeed when someone hands me everything?" Harper set down her coffee cup. "What if you don't fail?" What if this is exactly what you need and you're too scared to reach for it? They sat in silence. Outside, Archer was teaching Scout to shake hands, his laughter floating through the window. Harper spoke again, quieter. Rebecca wouldn't want this for you. You know that, right? She'd want you to be happy, to let yourself move forward. I know what Rebecca would want. I just don't know how to give it to her. Start by giving it to yourself. That evening, James stood outside Lakeview Cemetery as the sun set over Seattle. He hadn't planned to come here, hadn't even known he was heading this direction until he found himself at the gates. Rebecca's grave was in the newer section where the headstones were still sharp-edged and the grass hadn't fully grown in. Simple marker. Her name dates one line, beloved wife and mother. James knelt in the damp grass and did something he hadn't done in 7 years. He talked to her. I don't know if you can hear me. Don't even know if I believe in that anymore. But I'm here and I don't know where else to go. Breeze moved through the trees. The cemetery was empty except for him and the dead. There's this woman, Victoria Ashford. She wants to help me get back into nursing. Full scholarship, housing, the whole thing, and I know I should just take it. Everyone's telling me to take it. Even Archer thinks I should take it. He pulled up grass, let it fall through his fingers. But I'm scared, Beck. Scared that if I accept help it means I failed. Failed you, failed Archer, failed at being the man I'm supposed to be. The wind picked up. James closed his eyes. You told me to live, not just survive. Your last words, I promised I would, but I don't know how. Don't know how to let go of the guilt. Don't know how to move forward when moving forward feels like leaving you behind. Silence. No divine intervention, no sign from beyond. Just James and his questions and a tombstone that couldn't answer. He stood up, brushed dirt from his knees. I'm going to take it. The scholarship. Not because I want to, but because I have to. Because Archer deserves better than a father who's too proud to accept a chance at better. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wedding ring. He'd worn it on a chain around his neck for 7 years, never taking it off, a constant reminder of what he'd lost. Now he took off the chain, held the ring in his palm, feeling its weight. I'm not letting you go, just making room, making space for whatever comes next. I hope that's okay. I hope wherever you are, you understand. He put the ring in his pocket, not discarding it, just choosing to carry it differently. He walked out of the cemetery as the last light faded from the sky. Monday morning, James called the number on Victoria Ashford's business card. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and businesslike. Victoria Ashford. It's James Hewitt. I've thought about your offer. A pause, brief but loaded. And I have conditions. I'm listening. James had rehearsed this speech a dozen times in his head. Now the words came out steady, more confident than he felt. I want to earn every part of this. No special treatment because I saved your life. If I don't meet the program's standards, you fire me. Same as anyone else. Agreed. The housing assistance I'll pay you back once I'm working. I don't want charity. I want a loan that I repay. Unnecessary, but if it makes you feel better, fine. Archer goes to the foundation school, but I volunteer there. Tutoring, maintenance, whatever you need. I pay forward what I'm getting. Victoria's voice carried a hint of something that might have been approval. Anything else? Yeah. Why are you doing this? And don't tell me it's because I saved you. People save people all the time. They don't get full ride scholarships and housing and job placement. What do you actually want from me? The question hung in the digital space between Seattle and Boston. When Victoria spoke again, her voice was different, softer, more human. Honestly, I want to not die alone, having built an empire that means nothing. I want this foundation to matter. And I need people like you, people who've struggled, who understand what it's like to choose between food and rent, because those are the people who'll actually give a damn about our patients. The raw vulnerability in her answer surprised him. So I'm useful to you. Yes, and I'm useful to you. That's how this works, not charity, mutual benefit. James considered this. Transactional. Clear. No debt beyond what was explicitly stated. When does the program start? December 17th, 10 days. Can you be in Boston by then? Yes. Good. I'll have my assistant send you the paperwork. Housing will be ready when you arrive. Welcome to the Second Chance Initiative, Mr. Hewitt. She hung up. James stood in the shelter's hallway, phone still pressed to his ear, wondering what he'd just committed to. The next week passed in a blur of logistics, paperwork, background checks, medical forms. James sold what little he owned, his old laptop, some tools, a watch his mother had given him for graduation. Got enough for a bus ticket to Boston and a few weeks of food. Harper helped him pack, drove him to Archer's school for one last goodbye before he left. The principal had been understanding when Harper explained the situation. Let James pull Archer out of class for 15 minutes. They sat on a bench outside the administrative office. Archer's backpack was covered in superhero patches. He looked so small, so young, so undeserving of a father who kept leaving. I'm going to Boston tomorrow. Archer nodded. He'd known this was coming. For the nursing program? Yeah. 6 months. 6 months, then I come get you. We'll have our own place again, I promise. You promise, or regular promise? The distinction gutted him. Promise. Archer threw his arms around James's neck. I'm proud of you, Dad. You're going to be the best nurse. I'm proud of you too, buddy. You're handling this better than I am. I learned from you. You taught me to be brave even when I'm scared. James held his son and tried not to break. When the 15 minutes were up, a teacher came to collect Archer. The boy walked back to class without looking back, like he knew that looking back would make it harder. James watched him disappear through the doors and felt the distance between them become physical, a weight pressing down on his chest. Harper drove him to the Greyhound station. You're doing the right thing. Doesn't feel right. It will, eventually. The bus to Boston took 3 days. James had bought the cheapest ticket, no direct route, multiple transfers, seats that didn't recline, and bathrooms that didn't lock properly. He slept in 20-minute increments, head against the window, waking every time the bus hit a pothole or made a stop. Somewhere in Montana, a woman in her 60s sat next to him. She had kind eyes and the patient expression of someone who'd seen hard times and come through the other side. Long trip. 3 days. Where you headed? Boston, starting over. She nodded like this made perfect sense. My son did that once. Lost everything in the recession. Wife left house, foreclosed, dignity in the toilet. Moved across the country to rebuild from nothing. Did it work? Took 5 years, but yeah, it worked. He's got a good life now. Better than before, maybe. Sometimes you gotta burn it all down to build something worth keeping. James thought about this. About how his life had been burning for 7 years, and he'd been too afraid to let it actually turn to ash, too busy trying to save pieces that couldn't be seen. What if I can't do it? What if I fail? The woman smiled. Then you fail, and you get up and try something else. That's all any of us can do. She got off at the next stop. James never learned her name. But her words stayed with him through Wyoming, Illinois, Pennsylvania, all the way to the outskirts of Boston. He arrived at South Station on December 16th at 4 in the morning. The city was dark and cold, winter settling in with the kind of wet chill that got into your bones. James had one duffel bag, $300, and an address for Foundation-owned housing in Roxbury. The apartment was in a converted brownstone, subsidized housing for Foundation employees. James's unit was 2B, 2 bedrooms, clean but sparse, generic furniture, working heat, a refrigerator that hummed but functioned. It felt like a palace compared to the shelter. He dropped his bag and stood in the empty living room listening to the building settle. This was it, his fresh start, the life preserver Victoria Ashford had thrown him. Now he just had to not drown. Orientation began at 8 a.m. sharp. Ashford Foundation Medical Education Center occupied the 3rd floor of a building in Dorchester. The conference room held 12 students, all looking as nervous as James felt. Dr. Patricia Hayes ran the program. She was 55, compact and intense, with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd spent 30 years in emergency rooms and had seen every excuse twice. Her opening speech set the tone. Welcome to Second Chance. This program has a 60% graduation rate. Not because we're cruel, but because nursing is hard. You're here because you've got potential and because someone saw something in you worth investing in. Don't waste it. She went around the room, making each student introduce themselves. Deacon Walsh, 35, ex-Marine, Iraq veteran, lost his nursing license after opioid addiction, 3 years clean. Natalie Brennan, 42, single mother of 2, former CNA upgrading to RN. Tyler Grant, 29, former addict, overdosed twice, turned his life around through a faith-based recovery program. Others, each with a story, each broken in their own way, trying to piece themselves back together. When it was James's turn, he kept it brief. James Hewitt, 38, was a nurse, then an EMT. Been out of healthcare for 7 years, got a 6-year-old son I'm trying to build a life for. Dr. Hayes wrote something in her notebook, moved on. After orientation, she pulled James aside. You've got a solid foundation, good training, but 7 years is a long time. Expect to struggle, especially pharmacology. That's where most people fail. I'll work hard. Everyone works hard. Work smart. Use the resources. Don't be too proud to ask for help. Third person to tell him about pride. Message received. The first month was brutal. Classes 6 days a week, 8 hours a day. Anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, nursing theory. Material that came back slowly like a language he'd once spoken, but half forgotten. James studied every night after class. 4, 5, 6 hours. Fell asleep with textbooks open, woke up with highlighter stains on his face. Called Archer every Sunday, hearing about school and Scout and how Aunt Harper made the best grilled cheese. Never mentioned how hard it was. Never admitted he was drowning. The other students were forming study groups. James kept to himself. Old habits of self-reliance died hard. Deacon tried to pull him in. Yo, Hewitt, we're doing pharmacology review Tuesday night. You in? I'm good, thanks though. You sure this stuff is dense? Easier with a group. I prefer studying alone. Deacon shrugged, but his expression said he recognized the wall James had built and knew better than to keep banging against it. Week 3 brought clinical simulations. High-fidelity mannequins designed to mimic real patients. Vital signs, bleeding, reactions to medication, state-of-the-art training equipment that cost more than James made in a year when he was working security. The first scenario was routine. Diabetic patient, low blood sugar, standard intervention. James handled it fine. The second scenario destroyed him. Dr. Hayes set it up without warning. Postpartum hemorrhage. Patient delivered vaginally 40 minutes ago. BP dropping. Bleeding heavily. Newborn crying in the next room. Your primary nurse. What do you do? The room tilted. James heard the infant crying. Saw the mannequin's blood pooling on the floor, smelled antiseptic and fear. Except it wasn't a mannequin anymore. It was Rebecca. And the blood was real. And he was standing there useless, watching her die, unable to do anything, unable to save her, unable to be the nurse he'd trained to be when it mattered most. Mr. Hewitt, your orders? He couldn't speak, couldn't move. Mr. Hewitt, Deacon's voice cut through, quiet, concerned. James, man, you good? The alarm on the mannequin flatlined. Simulation over. Dr. Hayes' voice was flat. Maternal death. Time 4 minutes. Everyone else take 5. Mr. Hewitt, my office. James followed her on legs that didn't feel attached to his body. Dr. Hayes closed the door and gestured to a chair. He sat. She leaned against her desk. Talk to me. I froze. I saw. Why? My wife died in childbirth. 7 years ago, I was there. I was a nurse and I couldn't save her. The admission felt like vomiting up glass. Dr. Hayes' expression softened microscopically. You should have disclosed this on your application. Obstetric scenarios are clearly a trigger. I thought I could handle it. You can't, not yet. So what now? You kick me out? No, but you start counseling. Foundation provides it. 4 sessions minimum, non-negotiable. James wanted to argue, wanted to say he was fine, that he just needed to work harder, push through. But the words died on his tongue because they both knew he wasn't fine. Hadn't been fine in 7 years. Okay. Dr. Hayes pulled a card from her desk drawer. Dr. Morrison, she's good. Specializes in PTSD and grief. Call her today. She handed him the card. Their fingers brushed. A moment of human connection from a woman who'd probably seen 100 students fall apart in her office. James, listen to me. Wounded healers make the best nurses, but only if they heal their wounds first. You can't pour from an empty cup. The phrase again, different person, same wisdom. He took the card and walked out before the shame could crush him entirely. That night, James called Archer before bed. The boy was full of stories about a science project, about how he'd built a volcano that actually erupted, about how his teacher said he was the smartest kid in class. Pride and pain in equal measure. Archer was thriving without him, which was good, which felt like a knife. Dad, when are you coming to visit? Not sure yet, buddy. School is pretty intense. Are you doing okay? You sound tired. 6-year-olds were terrifyingly perceptive. I'm fine, just busy. Aunt Harper says being busy is good, means you're building something. Aunt Harper's smart. Dad, I love you. I love you too, buddy, so much. After they hung up, James sat in his empty apartment and stared at nothing. He thought about calling Dr. Morrison, thought about admitting he needed help, thought about how every instinct screamed that therapy was weakness, that real men handled their problems alone, that asking for help was just another form of failure. Then he thought about the simulation, about freezing, about how if that had been real, someone would be dead because he couldn't get past his own trauma. He dialed. Dr. Morrison's voicemail picked up. Professional, warm, inviting without being pushy. This is Dr. Claire Morrison. Please leave a message and I'll return your call within 24 hours. James almost hung up, but his finger wouldn't press the button. This is James Hewitt. Dr. Hayes gave me your number. I'm a student in the Second Chance program and I need... He stopped, started over. I had a wife who died 7 years ago and I can't seem to get past it, and it's affecting my ability to function, and I don't know what to do about it. The words came out in a rush, graceless and raw. Call me back when you can. He hung up, felt simultaneously lighter and more exposed than he had in years. Dr. Morrison called the next morning, scheduled him for Thursday at 4. The counseling office was in a different building, deliberately separate from the Foundation's medical facilities. Privacy, she explained when he arrived. Stigma reduction. Claire Morrison was younger than he'd expected, maybe 45. Calm presence. Office decorated with plants and soft lighting designed to feel safe rather than clinical. Thank you for calling. I know it wasn't easy. James sat in the chair across from her desk. Felt like a kid sent to the principal's office. Dr. Hayes said it was mandatory. That's one reason. What's your reason? I froze during a simulation. Obstetric emergency. It triggered memories of my wife dying and I completely shut down. Tell me about your wife. And so he did. Told her about Rebecca. About meeting in nursing school, falling in love over late-night study sessions, getting married too young because they were convinced they'd found forever. Told her about the pregnancy, the complications, the delivery that went wrong, the hemorrhaging that the doctors couldn't stop. The moment he became a father and a widower simultaneously. Told her about the guilt, about being a nurse who couldn't save his own wife, about how every time he tried to work in healthcare after he saw her face, heard her last breath, felt the crushing weight of inadequacy. Dr. Morrison listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. You've been carrying Rebecca's death as a personal failure for 7 years. Because it was. Was it, or was it a medical complication that happened despite everyone's best efforts? I was a nurse. I should have. You were her husband. You were terrified. You were human. All the training in the world doesn't prepare you to watch someone you love die. The words hit like a physical blow. But I failed her. No. Medicine failed her. The universe failed her. You were there. You held her hand. You gave her comfort in her final moments. That's not failure. That's love. James felt something crack inside his chest. 7 years of carefully constructed walls collapsing all at once. He cried. For the first time since the night Rebecca died. Big, ugly sobs that he couldn't control, couldn't stop, couldn't hide behind professional competence or masculine stoicism. Dr. Morrison pushed a box of tissues across the desk and waited. When the storm passed, James felt hollowed out, empty, but also lighter, like he'd been carrying a weight so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. This is going to take time. Grief doesn't have a timeline, but you can't keep running from it. Eventually it catches you. And when it does, it's worse than if you'd just faced it in the first place. How do I face it? By accepting that what happened wasn't your fault, by forgiving yourself for being human, by understanding that loving again doesn't erase Rebecca. It just means you're choosing life over guilt. They scheduled weekly sessions, Thursday afternoon standing appointment. James left the office feeling like he'd been emotionally disemboweled, but also feeling like maybe possibly he could survive this. Month 2 brought pharmacology exams. Dr. Hayes hadn't been kidding, this was where people failed. 200 medications to memorize, dosages, interactions, side effects, contraindications. The material was dense and unforgiving. James studied until his eyes burned, made flashcards, created mnemonics, drilled himself relentlessly, still failed the midterm. 72%, needed 75 to pass. Dr. Hayes called him into her office. You have 2 weeks to retake this. If you fail again, you're out of the program. I know. What's your plan? Study harder. Wrong answer. You're already studying hard. You need to study differently. Join the study group. Use the tutors. Stop trying to do this alone. But James couldn't stop trying to do it alone. Alone was safe. Alone meant not owing anyone. Alone meant not failing anyone but himself. He doubled down. 6 hours of study after class, 8 hours on weekends, lived on coffee and determination and the fading reserves of a will that was running on fumes. The night before the retake, he was in the foundation cafeteria at 2 in the morning. Surrounded by textbooks, notes, highlighters, the debris of a man trying to force knowledge into a brain that was too tired to absorb anymore. He put his head in his hands. Footsteps. Someone entering the cafeteria. James looked up. Victoria Ashford stood in the doorway dressed in business casual despite the hour. She looked as surprised to see him as he was to see her. Mr. Hewitt, burning the midnight oil. Something like that. She walked over, looked at the spread of materials. Pharmacology. Retake tomorrow. If I fail, I'm out. Victoria pulled out a chair, sat down. Tell me about it. And for some reason, exhaustion, desperation, the sheer surrealism of being in a cafeteria with a billionaire at 2 a.m. He told her about failing the midterm, about studying alone, about how the material wouldn't stick, wouldn't connect no matter how many hours he put in. Victoria listened, then spoke. Do you know how many times I failed at MIT? James shook his head. Calculus twice, chemistry once, almost flunked out freshman year. He couldn't picture it, this put-together successful woman failing at anything. What changed? My advisor told me something. She said I was so busy trying to prove I deserved to be there, I'd forgotten to actually learn. The words landed with uncomfortable precision. Victoria continued. You're carrying guilt, Mr. Hewitt, about accepting help, about Rebecca, about Archer. And all that guilt is taking up space in your brain that should be used for learning. How do you? I investigated you. Remember, I know about your wife, about your son, about the fact that you've been running from help for 7 years because accepting it feels like admitting failure. She leaned forward. But here's the thing. This program exists because people deserve second chances. Not because they're special, because they're human, and humans need help. That's not weakness, that's reality. James wanted to argue, wanted to defend his stubborn self-reliance, but he was too tired. I don't know how to not do everything alone. Then learn, starting now. Victoria pulled out her phone, typed something. I'm clearing my morning. We're going to review pharmacology together. Two brains are better than one. You don't have to. I'm not offering because I have to. I'm offering because I want your success. This program matters to me. You matter to me. The last sentence hung in the air, freighted with something James couldn't name. Why? Victoria met his eyes. Because you reminded me what value looks like. Not worth. Value. You saved my life asking for nothing. In my world, everyone wants something, but you didn't. And that matters more than you know. They studied together through the night, Victoria quizzing him, creating mnemonics, making pharmacology competitive in a way that made it click. By dawn, James had retained more than he had in 2 weeks of solo grinding. You're a good teacher. You're a good student when you're not sabotaging yourself. She stood to leave, paused at the door. James, this program isn't charity. You're not here because I feel sorry for you. You're here because I need nurses who understand struggle, who see patients as people, not cases. That's you. Stop questioning whether you deserve to be here and just be here. Then she was gone. James sat alone in the cafeteria as morning light filtered through the windows. Thought about her words, about value and worth, about the difference between accepting help and accepting defeat. He packed up his books and went to take the exam, scored an 89, passed. Dr. Hayes pulled him aside after results posted. Better. What changed? Got help. From someone who wouldn't take no for an answer. Hayes smiled, rare expression on her usually stern face. Good. Keep doing that. Month 3 brought clinical rotations, real patients, real emergencies, real consequences. James was assigned to the Foundation's trauma clinic in Roxbury, the same neighborhood where he lived, the same community he'd been part of for 3 months without really seeing. First day, first patient, a 62-year-old Desert Storm veteran living in his car. Foot infection from frostbite. No insurance. Hadn't seen a doctor in 3 years. James cleaned the wound, applied dressing, wrote a prescription for antibiotics. Can't afford meds. $12 might as well be $1,200. The words were James's own from 7 years ago. Different voice, same desperation. Hold on. He found the clinic's social worker, got medication samples, meal vouchers, information about veteran housing programs, came back with a bag full of resources. The man stared at it like James had handed him a miracle. You really get it, don't you? What it's like. Yeah, I really do. The shift changed something. James wasn't just learning nursing again. He was remembering why he'd become a nurse in the first place. Not for the science, for the people, for the chance to see someone in crisis and say, I see you. I'll help. Patients trusted him in a way they didn't trust other nurses, probably because he didn't talk down to them, didn't judge. Understood that poverty wasn't moral failure, just terrible math. A single mother came in with her asthmatic son. No insurance. The boy wheezing, scared. James did the nebulizer treatment, then worked the system, found a patient assistance program, got them a 3-month supply of inhalers for free. Taught the mother about triggers, prevention, when to seek emergency care. She cried, thanking him. James just nodded. This was the work. This was what mattered. An elderly man came in with chest pain, scared to go to the ER because of bills. James did an EKG, abnormal, heart attack in progress. Sir, debt doesn't matter if you're dead. Let me call the ambulance. The man survived. Thanked James later. James just felt grateful he'd been there. A teenage overdose case. Narcan administration. The kid came back disoriented and ashamed. James sat with him after, no judgment in his voice. I knew guys like you in the program here. Some made it. You can too. Connected him to a rehab program. Followed up a week later. The kid had checked in. Small victories. By week 2, he had a reputation. The nurse who cared, who found solutions, who treated patients like humans instead of problems to be solved and discharged. Dr. Hayes did an observation visit, watched him work for 4 hours, pulled him aside after. This is it. This is why we need you. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. For the first time since Rebecca died, James felt like he was where he belonged. Month 4, board meeting at Ashford Medical Technologies. James didn't know about it until after, when the Boston Globe ran a story, Ashford CEO under fire for foundation spending. The article detailed board concerns about the Second Chance program, cost per student, graduation rates compared to traditional programs, questions about Victoria's personal involvement with students. Included a photo, Victoria and James leaving the foundation building at night after their study session. Headline: Inappropriate Relationship, Billionaire CEO's Late-Night Sessions with Student Raise Eyebrows. The implication was clear and ugly. James read the article in his apartment and felt rage rise like bile. They were using him to attack her, twisting a moment of genuine help into something sordid. He showed up at Victoria's office unannounced. Her assistant tried to stop him. "Ms. Ashford is in meetings. Tell her James Hewitt is here. She'll see me." 5 minutes later, he was in her office. Corner view overlooking Boston Harbor, everything expensive and impersonal. Victoria looked tired, more so than he'd ever seen her. He threw the article on her desk. "Was I ever more than a good story to you?" She stared at him. "Excuse me, the program, the scholarship, was it real, or was I just your pet project, your redemption arc? You can't actually believe. Then explain. Explain why you personally tutor me when you have a dozen other students. Explain why I'm different. Explain why the board thinks we're having an affair." Victoria stood. Her expression went cold, the CEO mask sliding into place. "You're different because you struggled and asked for help. The others either don't struggle or won't ask. That's it." "That's not it. There's something else. Some reason you care so much about my success specifically." She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, the mask cracked. "Fine. You want the truth, yes. You inspired this program because you showed me what I'd been missing. 20 years building an empire. For what? To die alone and forgotten." The vulnerability in her voice surprised him. "You saved my life and disappeared. Like it was nothing. Like helping people was just what you did, and I realized I'd spent 2 decades accumulating worth billions of dollars worth without creating any actual value." She walked to the window, stared out at the city. "This foundation, this program, it's not charity. It's me trying to matter, trying to have value instead of just worth." She turned back to him. "And yes, I care about your success because you represent what I'm trying to do. If you fail, it means I was wrong. That throwing money at problems doesn't fix them, that I'm still just a rich woman playing at meaning." The honesty was devastating. James felt his anger deflate. "I'm not your litmus test. I know, but you're also not just another student, whether either of us likes it." They stood in silence. Two people who'd saved each other in different ways, now tangled in complications neither had anticipated. "The board wants me to distance myself from students. No more personal tutoring. Delegate everything to Dr. Hayes. Probably smart. Probably." Another silence. "I should go. James." He stopped at the door. "I care about you. More than is appropriate. More than is professional. And I'm sorry if that's made things harder." He looked back at her, saw loneliness that mirrored his own, saw someone who'd built walls as high as his, just made of different materials. "I care about you too, which is why I need to focus on graduating. We should keep our distance." She nodded, professional mask back in place. "Agreed. That's best for both of us." Both lying, both knowing they were lying, neither brave enough to say otherwise. James walked out of her office and tried to ignore the feeling that he'd just made a terrible mistake. The next 2 months passed in a blur of clinical work. Final exams and mandatory distance from Victoria. They saw each other in passing hallways, board meetings, graduation planning, acknowledged each other with professional nods and nothing more. It hurt more than James expected. He threw himself into work, into studying, into weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Morrison, where he slowly, painfully learned to forgive himself for Rebecca's death. "You're making progress," Dr. Morrison said one Thursday. "The guilt is lifting. You're allowing yourself to live again. Doesn't feel like living. Feels like going through motions. Because you're still running from something. Or someone. James knew she meant Victoria, but admitting that felt like admitting too much. Deacon noticed too. They were studying together one evening. James had finally joined the study group and Deacon looked up from his notes. "You gonna tell me what's going on with you and Ashford?" "Nothing's going on. Man, I've seen you look at her, and I've seen her look at you. That ain't nothing. It's complicated. Everything worth having is complicated doesn't mean you run from it." James didn't respond, but the words stayed with him. Month 6, final exams, NCLEX licensing test, 5 hours of computer adaptive questions designed to determine if he was competent enough to be trusted with lives. Results came back in 48 hours. James spent those 2 days in a state of suspended animation. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just waited. The email arrived at 6 a.m. on a Thursday, subject NCLEX results. He opened it with shaking hands. Pass James Malcolm Hewitt, RN. License reinstated. He called Archer first. "Buddy, I did it. I'm a nurse again." Archer's sleepy voice turned bright. "Really, Dad? That's amazing. Can I come home now?" "Soon. Real soon. I promise. Does this mean Ms. Torrey will come visit too? I miss her." James felt his chest tighten. He'd mentioned Victoria to Archer once months ago. The boy had latched onto it. "It's complicated, buddy. Grown-ups always say that when they're scared." Out of the mouths of children. After hanging up, James sat in his apartment and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in 7 years: pride. Not the toxic kind born of ego, the quiet kind that came from actually earning something. And underneath it, an ache. A loneliness that had nothing to do with Archer being in Seattle and everything to do with Victoria being just across the city but impossibly far away. Graduation ceremony was small, 8 students from the original 12. Each had clawed their way through 6 months of hell and come out the other side licensed and employed. James gave a short speech, keeping it simple. Second chances aren't given. They're earned. Every single person here earned this. Applause, handshakes, Deacon pulling him into a hug that cracked his ribs. "We did it, man. We actually did it." "Yeah, we did." Natalie was crying happy tears. Tyler was grinning like a kid on Christmas. Dr. Hayes was shaking hands, pride evident on her usually stern face. Victoria attended but stayed in the back. When their eyes met across the room, she smiled. Small, sad, genuine. Then she left before he could reach her. James found an envelope on the seat where she'd been sitting. His name on the front in her handwriting. Inside was a job offer letter. Foundation Trauma Response Unit, $68,000 a year. Benefits. Start date in 2 weeks. And a handwritten note: "James, you earned this. Every bit of it. Now go save lives. That's what you were meant to do. I'm proud of you." V, no signature, just an initial. Like she couldn't bring herself to write her full name because that would make it too personal. James folded the note and put it in his wallet next to the photo of Archer. 2 pieces of his life that mattered most, but there was a third piece missing, and he'd been too scared to reach for it. 2 weeks later, James started his first day at the Foundation's Trauma Response Unit. Real job, real salary, real chance to build something sustainable. The charge nurse Brenda was giving him the tour when the alert came through at 11:15 a.m. "Mass casualty, bus accident on Mass Ave, all available staff to Ambulance Bay." James ran. Years of training kicked in. The controlled chaos of emergency response, ambulances arriving, 15 patients. Blood and fear and the organized pandemonium of emergency medicine at its finest. He triaged with the precision of muscle memory, red tags for critical, yellow for urgent, green for stable, moving through the injured with calm efficiency, making split-second decisions that meant life or death. First patient compound fracture, stable vitals, yellow tag. Second patient chest trauma, difficulty breathing, red tag. Third patient minor lacerations, alert and oriented, green tag. Fourth patient elderly man, unconscious but breathing, red tag. Fifth patient on a stretcher, Well-dressed woman, unresponsive, blood matting her hair. James approached, began assessment, checked for consciousness, no response, checked vitals, looked at her face. His world stopped. Victoria, her eyes were closed. GCS, score 8, blood pressure 90/60, pulse thready rapid, suspected head trauma, possible internal bleeding. Every medical instinct kicked in, but underneath terror, raw and absolute, not her, not now, not after everything. His hands shook as he started assessment, had to force himself into nurse mode, had to treat her like any other patient even though she was everything but. "I need her priority, Red." His voice came out steady despite the fear. He inserted 2 large-bore IVs, started fluids, immobilized her C-spine, monitored vitals, barked orders to nurses who appeared with equipment. Victoria's hand was cold. He held it while working, part assessment, part desperation. Whispered words she couldn't hear. "Stay with me. You don't get to leave. Not now. Not like this." Deacon appeared next to him, scrubs from another department. "James, man, let me take—" "No, I've got her. Brother, you know her. You can't—" "I said I've got her." His voice came out sharp. Deacon stepped back, hands raised, but stayed close. James worked, placed the IVs, got fluids running, called out vitals, did everything right because he had to, because the alternative was unthinkable. The trauma team arrived. Dr. Martinez taking over. "We've got her, James. Good work. We'll take it from here." He didn't want to let go, wanted to follow her to surgery, wanted to be there every second, but they wheeled her away. And he stood in the ambulance bay, hands shaking, covered in her blood, feeling Rebecca's death all over again. The difference was, this time he'd been able to help, this time his hands had worked. This time he'd saved her instead of watching helplessly. But the terror was the same. Deacon put a hand on his shoulder. "She's in good hands. Martinez is the best." James nodded, couldn't speak. "You did good, man. You saved her life again." "I couldn't lose her." The words came out broken. "Not her." Deacon's expression shifted to understanding. "You love her." It wasn't a question. James didn't answer. Didn't need to. "Then you better tell her when she wakes up. Life's too short for complicated." Dr. Hayes found him in the waiting room 6 hours later. He'd cleaned up, changed scrubs, but hadn't left. Couldn't leave. Other patients from the accident had been treated and released or admitted. The chaos had settled. But James remained staring at the floor, replaying every moment of Victoria's assessment, second-guessing every decision. "She's out of surgery," Hayes said, sitting beside him. James looked up. "And critical but stable, ruptured spleen, liver laceration, skull fracture. They relieved the pressure. Next 72 hours are crucial. Can I see her? Family only in ICU." James started to stand, defeat washing over him. Of course he couldn't see her. He was just an employee, just a former student, just the man who loved her but had been too scared to say it. Hayes called after him. "James, wait." He turned. "Her emergency contact form, she listed you. You're her medical proxy, your family." He stared. "What? She updated it 3 weeks ago, right after graduation. If she can't make medical decisions, they're yours to make." The weight of that settled on him like a physical thing. Victoria had trusted him with her life, literally. Had listed a man she'd known 6 months as her next of kin because she had no one else, or because she'd chosen him. Hayes handed him the ICU visitor badge. "Room 12. She needs you." James took the badge with hands that still trembled. He walked through the ICU doors. The unit was quiet machines, beeping rhythmically, nurses moving efficiently between rooms. Room 12 was at the end of the hall. He pushed open the door. Victoria lay motionless under white sheets, her face pale against the pillow. A ventilator breathed for her. IVs dripped medications. Bandages wrapped her head where surgeons had relieved pressure from the skull fracture. She looked smaller than he'd ever seen her, stripped of the armor of power suits and boardrooms and CEO confidence. James pulled a chair to the bedside, took her hand. It was cold despite the heated blankets layered over her. He sat, and for the first time since leaving her office 2 months ago, he let himself feel everything he'd been running from. The fear of losing her, the regret of wasted time, the love he'd been too scared to name. He spoke quietly, unsure if she could hear, but needing to say it anyway. I don't know if you can hear me. Doctors say talking helps, so here I am, talking. The ventilator hissed, the monitors beeped. I was angry at you, for caring, for making me care back, for complicating everything when I was trying to keep it simple. He squeezed her hand. But simple isn't always better. Sometimes simple is just lonely wearing a different name. A nurse entered to check vitals. Young woman, competent movements. Are you family? She listed me as medical proxy. The nurse's expression shifted. Recognition. Understanding. She's stable. Critical but improving. Surgeon is optimistic. Could wake in hours or days. Brain injuries don't follow schedules. After the nurse left, James settled in for a vigil he hadn't planned but couldn't abandon. He thought about calling Archer, decided against it. The boy didn't need to know his father was sitting in an ICU holding the hand of a woman he'd claimed to be maintaining professional distance from. Instead, James just sat, watched Victoria breathe, watched machines monitor her life in numbers and graphs, and tried to remember when exactly she'd stopped being his benefactor and started being everything else. Hours passed. Shift change happened. New nurses came to check on Victoria. James didn't leave. At some point, someone brought him coffee. He drank it without tasting it. At some point, Deacon appeared in the doorway. You should go home. Get some rest. I can't. James. I left once. Walked out of her office and told myself it was the right thing. I'm not doing that again. Deacon nodded, left without arguing. Night fell. The ICU dimmed. James dozed in the chair, jerking awake at every change in the monitor's rhythm. In the pre-dawn hours, he spoke to her again. I don't know what we are. Don't know what we could be. But I know leaving that room 2 months ago was the biggest mistake I've made since Rebecca died. And I've made a lot of mistakes. He stood, stretched, sat back down. So when you wake up, not if when I'm going to tell you the truth, that I love you, that I'm terrified, that I don't know how to do this, but I want to try. And if you don't feel the same, that's okay. But at least I'll have said it. The words hung in the air, a promise, a commitment. James leaned back in the chair and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, dawn was filtering through the window, and Victoria's hand was warm in his. Because somewhere between the plane and the cafeteria, between the distance and the longing, between the fear and the hope, he'd fallen in love with her. And this time he wasn't running away. This time he was staying, no matter what came next.